Hey everyone, I'm back with another horror movie recommendation. Today, I'm recommending the latest thriller, Eighth, which topped the Thai box office for 4 consecutive weeks in 2025. The film was nominated for Best Screenplay in the horror category at last year's Bangkok International Film Festival. What are you waiting for? Tag your bored, irresponsible friends and tell them! Sister Grace has an 80-year-old grandma here who washes her hair while doing a handstand and splits all at the same time. The story begins with a long trip. At a bus station in Bangkok, Thailand, a man named Stanley bought a long-distance bus ticket from Bangkok to New York. However, on his way to the back of the bus with his ticket, Stanley accidentally bumped into an old lady. Just as Stanley was about to apologize, he smelled a strange, foul odor. Stanley didn't pay much attention to the unidentified liquid on the ground, assuming the old lady had brought something with a strong odor. However, just as she went to the back hall to wait for the bus, that foul stench hit her nose again. Stanley looked up and saw the old lady and the little boy walking towards her. They sat down in the seats next to Stanley. Due to the hot weather and the poor ventilation in the back area, a foul odor quickly filled the hall, causing some passengers to start whispering and wondering if the old woman had some strange illness. Just then, 4 girls, not as pretty as Grace, also came to the back area. Smelling the pungent odor, the girl in the lead, Emily, initially thought there were dead rats in the back area. But after sniffing around, she realized the odor was coming from the old woman in front. Emily thought the old woman had brought some local specialties, like salted fish, that weren't properly sealed, and reminded her to reseal them. "Auntie, Auntie, Auntie, may you bless Rui." However, neither the old lady nor the little boy paid any attention to Emily's reminder. Looking at the strange old lady, her friend Sister Kate felt Emily's approach was a bit abrupt, so she pulled Emily back to her seat. Sister Kate noticed some strange stains on Stanley's clothes as he sat in front of her, and she kindly pointed them out to him. Looking at the stain on his clothes, Stanley recalled the scene when he bought the ticket. He had accidentally bumped into the old lady when he came over. Could the stain have gotten there from that contact? Feeling disgusted, Stanley rushed to the bathroom. He put the hem of his shirt into the basin of water, but no matter how he washed it, the foul odor wouldn't go away. Just as Stanley was getting frustrated, the toilet door suddenly opened. Stanley was startled by the sudden appearance of the little boy. Before he could speak, the boy left the restroom. Looking back, he saw the boy's belongings on the sink. Out of kindness, Stanley took them back to the back of the parking area. But when Stanley returned, the little boy was gone. Only the old woman was left alone on the seat. Stanley, enduring the stench, put the things back on the seat and reminded the old woman not to forget them later. Just then, the bus driver arrived at the station. Hearing the driver's shouts, the passengers began packing their luggage. Everyone thought they wouldn't be riding on the same bus as the old lady, but to everyone's surprise, just as the bus was about to depart, the old lady appeared at the door. The flight attendant almost vomited from the smell of the old lady, but out of politeness, she had to endure it. The unpleasant stench filled the carriage as soon as the old lady boarded, drawing disgusted looks from the passengers. However, the old lady remained unfazed by the passengers and walked calmly to Stanley's seat. Seeing the old lady's seat right next to her, Stanley completely panicked. She turned around, her face contorted with disgust. But just as she looked out the window, Stanley was horrified to discover the old lady didn't have a reflection. Once all passengers had arrived, the bus left the station and headed out of the city. Despite the driver turning on the air conditioning at its highest setting, the stench was still overwhelming, and the passengers had no choice but to endure it. Just then, the attendants began distributing snacks and drinking water. But when she arrived at the old lady's seat, the old lady refused to accept anything. Unable to bear it any longer, Stanley approached the conductor and asked to change seats. However, the bus was already full and there were no seats available. The thought of enduring the stench for the entire journey made Stanley extremely uncomfortable. She wanted to get off, but the long-distance bus could only stop at the next station. The conductor told Stanley to bear with it for a while and that she could change buses at the next station. Just as the two were talking, the old lady in her seat suddenly stood up. She coughed violently and coughed up a large mouthful of blood. Upon learning that someone had suddenly fallen ill, the driver quickly stopped the bus on the side of the road. Passengers helped the elderly woman off the bus, and the conductor immediately called an ambulance. Already annoyed by the stench, the passengers were now even more dissatisfied with the wait. One woman approached the driver, saying she had an appointment with a specialist at 9 a.m. the next day. The elderly woman, worried about missing the consultation, suggested that the flight attendant stay so the driver could depart immediately. The flight attendant, of course, refused. However, just as everyone was arguing, a boy on the roadside suddenly shouted. Everyone turned to look, only to find that the old woman who had been lying on the roadside was gone. The bizarre scene terrified everyone present. The passengers, who had just been complaining, rushed into the carriage. The driver thought the old lady wasn't dead, just unconscious. But Mia told everyone definitively that the old lady wasn't breathing. Stanley, who was standing nearby, also stepped forward to testify. She had repeatedly confirmed 3 times that the old lady was indeed alive. She breathed, but if the old lady had already passed away, where was her body? Emily remembered a legend that supposedly there was an evil witchcraft in the area that could make the deceased return home on their own. Grandpa, hearing Emily's words, Sister Kate and the others remembered the previous stench. No wonder the old lady smelled so bad. It was because she had passed away long ago. The more they talked, the more frightened they became, and they hurriedly returned to the bus. The driver was also somewhat uneasy, suspecting that they had encountered something supernatural. Although he didn't know why the old lady had disappeared, now was not the time to dwell on such things. The driver locked the doors and prepared to leave. However, just as he was counting the passengers, the conductor discovered that the bus, which originally had 31 passengers, had an extra one. "You don't care, you don't care." Hearing the flight attendant's words, the already frightened passengers panicked even more, and everyone started talking at once, all thinking that the extra person was the vengeful spirit of the old lady. Just then, the driver came into the carriage and told the passengers that the company had arranged for a new bus to come and transfer them, but the bus was at a station 120 kilometers away, and they needed to get to the station first. As for the missing old lady, the company had also reported it to the police, and the police would handle it. Hearing the driver's arrangements, the passengers in the carriage finally quieted down. The driver started the bus again and headed towards the next stop. Without the old lady, the stench in the carriage quickly dissipated, and the passengers leaned back in their seats and unknowingly fell asleep. However, no one noticed that shortly after they fell asleep, the missing old lady reappeared in the carriage, speeding along the winding mountain road for 2.5 hours. The bus arrived at a remote mountain area. A dazed Emily took out her phone to check the time, but found there was no signal. Hearing Emily's words, Chad and the others also looked at their phones. They assumed there were no cell towers nearby and didn't think much of it. However, just as they reached a bend in the road, the driver suddenly noticed the missing old woman appearing. On the roadside, the monk in the carriage also witnessed this scene and hurriedly drew the curtains. However, the strange occurrences did not end there. The train attendant came to the carriage to see if any passengers needed help, but as soon as he arrived, the restroom lights suddenly flickered, followed by the sound of an old woman coughing coming from inside. Hearing the cough, the passengers in the carriage panicked. An elderly man nearby wanted the train attendant to come and check, but the attendant was also afraid. Just then, a passenger looked at Stanley and said that it was because Stanley was shouting that she wanted to change seats that she had angered the old lady. She told Stanley to go and see. Seeing that some people were egging her on, the other passengers also thought it made sense. Under the pressure from the passengers, Stanley had no choice but to go to the restroom. However, when she pushed open the restroom door, there was nothing inside. "I see you." A bizarre scene unfolded as Stanley hurriedly retreated. Passengers turned to look and saw a dark figure appear at the restroom door. Seeing the strange figure, passengers in the back rushed into the front of the carriage. However, an elderly man, due to extreme tension, suffered a heart attack. Fortunately, a nearby passenger quickly supported him. But when everyone turned back, the dark figure had vanished. The strange attendant took out a flashlight to try and see what the figure was, but there was nothing at the restroom door. Just then, an elderly man stepped out. The old man didn't believe in ghosts or monsters. He insisted on going to take a look. Seeing the arrogant old man, the young man behind him kicked him. Before the passengers could figure out what was happening, a large amount of black liquid flowed out of the toilet. This completely unsettled the passengers, and even the previously arrogant old man panicked. However, the strange events didn't end there. The toilet door was reopened, and bizarre bloody handprints appeared inside the carriage. The horrifying scene terrified the chubby passenger. She opened the aisle door and ran to the driver's seat, but when she looked back, she found the driver already dead inside. The chubby woman opened the door and jumped off the bus. Seeing her panicked jump, another woman couldn't sit still either. He wanted to go to the driver's seat, but found the door locked. With her husband's help, the door was opened a crack. The old woman tried to squeeze through, but her neck got caught in the crack. By the time her husband pulled her back, she was already dead. The series of strange events made the passengers even more agitated. The old man who had come earlier tried to force his way through the window, but as he pushed through the crowd, an old woman suddenly appeared in the aisle. With just a glance from the old woman, the old man picked up a small hammer and smashed it against himself. Seeing the gruesome death of Owen, the passengers panicked. One passenger opened the aisle door and jumped off the bus. Seeing someone jump, several other passengers followed suit. In the chaos, Stanley rushed to the driver's seat. He pushed aside the mortal driver and tried to stop the bus, but no matter how hard he pressed the brakes, the bus wouldn't budge. Before Stanley could react, the bus rounded a bend and, without slowing down, crashed into a large tree on the roadside. When Stanley opened his eyes again, he found the car overturned on the side of the road. Stanley opened the car door, wanting to get out and ask for help, but as soon as he got out, he stepped on something and slipped and fell to the ground. When he looked up, he saw a horrifying scene. Police arrived at the scene after daybreak and found the bus wrecked at the bottom of the cliff. All 31 passengers were dead. However, after examining the bodies, police discovered that the passengers had died before the bus plunged off the cliff. It turned out that the air conditioning had been running for an extended period, causing an increase in carbon monoxide levels in the passenger compartment, leading to their death by poisoning in their sleep. That concludes our overview of the 2025 Thai thriller, The Haunted Bus. Overall, the film is of decent quality, especially the ending. That's all for today's sharing. See you next time. Hey everyone, I'm back with another horror movie recommendation. Today, I'm recommending the latest thriller, Eighth, which topped the Thai box office for 4 consecutive weeks in 2025. The film was nominated for Best Screenplay in the horror category at last year's Bangkok International Film Festival. What are you waiting for?